Hello and welcome to the Humble Ego podcast, a space where we can have truthful conversations about the hard, uncomfortable and rewarding parts of being a creative. I am Joy, for those of you who don't know me, and through conversations with the creators I admire, I really want to figure out how we can stay balanced, productive and true to our authentic selves whilst putting our work out into the world. Today is a really exciting episode because I am joined with a special guest. Today I have musician, artist, I'm going to say poet.
Why not?
All-round creative, also one of my really good friends, Paddy Swain.
You're too kind. I don't know if I could wear all those hats.
Oh, you definitely
I'll surely
can.
give it a try.
You definitely can. We have known each other for a while now. We met at beginning of 2020 or like end of 2019. It was like COVID was just starting.
Yeah, I think must have been end of 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to start with saying how we met because I remember it really clearly and I feel like it's a really really cute moment, which is like pretty much, if you don't know me and haven't seen my YouTube videos, I feel like I've talked on there before, but I am not a huge party person. Like, I love being social, I love all that stuff, but I don't really tend to go to many parties.
Sure, yeah. We'll
Sure.
say that for the cameras, right?
No, and I have gotten better, but anyway, I got invited to this party. I really didn't want to go, but I was like, Joy, you might meet someone really cool there. Just go. So I forced myself to go to this party, and it was an interesting night.
Yeah.
It was
crazy.
Yeah.
It was like quite intense. Like just a lot of people. A lot of people were quite loose. Yeah, but it was the first night I like DJ'd a proper party, like ever.
Yeah, and I remember leading up to the party and like everyone was like, Paddy's DJing. And I was like, who is Paddy?
Paddy guy?
Yeah, I was like, who is this DJ guy and why is everyone so hyped? Anyway, I go to this party.
It was up to me.
No, it was cute. I actually don't remember seeing much of your set because I was just like outside most of the time. I'm definitely, if I do go to a party, I'm that person that's like trying to find the combos in the little corners.
Hence the podcast.
Yeah, hence the podcast. But yeah, I remember I was like helping some friends that were fucking going through it. Having a moment, and I was trying to take care of them. And whilst I was doing that, I needed to get another friend to take care of them. And so I went to this friend, and then he was talking to the DJ.
That's me. That's where I came in. Yeah. And I remember because if we pick up, I had seen one of your videos like the day before or something.
Yeah,
something
so
super
random.
weird. And it was kind of that thing, like we live in a small area and I was like, you have that illusion that you know everyone. And then it was kind of this thing of like, who is this joyous person that like people that I know hang out with or like they tagged. And then I was like, I think saw your Instagram and then I saw the video or like one of the videos even got recommended, which seems crazy because like I don't even think I would watch anything
my kind of videos
that would hit that algorithm.
So random.
But yeah, and then I ended up seeing it, and then you were like sitting there, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, like, I saw one of your videos yesterday," and it was like at a moment where I remember just being like, it's great that it's super cool that you're doing this, like, and it was super nice to kind of like I remember just having that kind of profound respect of like, because at the time like. It wasn't a massive thing. Like it wasn't like you had heaps of subscribers.
No,
like,
I think I had like 800 subscribers or something like that.
It was like early days, but it was kind of that thing of like, hey, she's doing it. And she's going for something and she's putting energy into it. And like, yeah, like it's such there's like a consistency there. Like it was amazing. And I remember just being like, hey, like this is great. Like this is so cool.
I know that like meant so much to me because you wouldn't have known at the time. But like at the time, I was so insecure about putting videos online. Like we live in a very small town. Not many people are doing it. And I was just, just feeling like, it was just a very vulnerable thing. It still is for me, but like I'm definitely a lot more comfortable and don't really care about that stuff as much. But even then I was still like, oh my God, what do people think about me? Blah, blah, blah. And I definitely found like in the area, like no one would really tell me. Because with like an Instagram story, you can see who's seen it, right?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
YouTube, you don't know. So you just have these mysterious views and likes. Yeah. So I just never knew who watched it, and no one ever really like came up to me in public. Now it's completely different. Like people will be like, oh yeah, I watch your videos, blah, blah, blah. But back then, no one really, I mean, I didn't really have many people watching my videos, but even the people that now admit to watching my videos would never tell me.
Yeah, interesting.
And yeah.
I think, from memory also, I think I was in a phase of, I think I remember being like, you just got to be a lot more, like, because I, like, open about these things. Like, like, she's doing great things, like, you should tell her that.
Yeah.
But then again, like, I don't know, I think I go through phases of that as well. Like, I don't know if I would, like, it was just, it lined up in a moment of, like, it was so fresh in the mind. It meant
so much to me.
You were sitting right there. It was like, well, I might as well, like,
literally,
like, we're, like, sitting here anyway.
Yeah. I just remember thinking it was so cool. I was like, wow, he just fully acknowledged that he saw that, even though he's clearly not my demographic, and like, you know, like, that was the other. And I was just like, that's really sick. And so I left that party after the weirdest night, and I was like, oh my God, at least I met this random DJ guy and had a nice convo with him. Yeah. And then you messaged me the next day, and we got dinner with me, you, and another friend.
Because that was the thing as well. I think I was talking to that friend as well.
Yeah.
And that was like, and I think because it was just the three of us all hanging out, it was kind of like, this would kind of be a good hang.
Yeah,
like, let's
fully.
do it.
And we're all like, I feel like we're referring to a friend called Kilty, and he's also very talented, like musician, artist and stuff. So I feel like, incredible. Yeah, it just very much was like a really wholesome, like just getting together to talk about creativity. And that's why I kind of wanted to say the story of how we met, because I remember just that feeling of meeting you and being like, oh my God, someone that gets it. Like straight away, we're just having these convos about like, just creativity, putting yourself out there, figuring out what you want to do, and like just all this stuff, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much the foundations, or like the way we connected as well.
Yeah. It was also like, like we said before, through COVID times. So like we were just doing these like long beach walks because we weren't really allowed to just like hang out at like coffee places weren't open.
Yeah, you had to be exercising.
Yeah, so we were just like walking.
Walking the beach, walking Bruns Beach.
But it was kind of wholesome because we would get to like have these like beautiful.
Long walks on the beach, super wholesome.
Yeah, like just meet this new friend and then just be like, hey, want to go on like an hour beach walk and just chat about life. Absolutely. Yeah, so I really loved that like beginning to our friendship, and just like, I don't know, I look back at it now and I'm just like, I have always, I don't know about you, I've always very much like fantasized about meeting like other creative people and like having those friendships. I don't know, I had like creative friends growing up, but not really as much. I don't know if you had a different experience, but I just remember meeting you and being like, oh my God, it's happening, I'm starting to meet my people.
Yeah, or like I guess like having an acknowledgement of the creativity, and also probably just like respecting someone and liking what they do in like a way that you're like, oh yeah, I just want to support this, or like I'm really interested in this, and so you're like interested in kind of I don't know, like as in, you know, it's a relationship built on like respect for each other's thing, and that's like a nice, I think that's a nice place to start. And yeah, because it's definitely like, you know, you have creative friends, but sometimes like you just never end up in a creative space together, like, or you both maybe have your own battles with it, or maybe don't feel so comfortable talking about it, or, you know, you're going through all your different things about it. So like when you have those relationships where you can just be like, talk about what you're doing, and not feel like a jealousy or a weirdness, because like I think that can also happen. Like you can kind of have those relationships where it's like, there can be tension and things, but I guess we were also doing such different things. But then at the same time, like, they could kind of interlink, and they were nice, and we can kind of give thoughts and things on both sides. So it was
100%. Yeah. I wanted to start with that, but I actually also wanted to ask you, because obviously we're good friends. I know a lot about you, but I want to just hear about your story, because I really do think you're so talented, and the more I get to know you, the more I'm like, wow, this guy has a crazy, beautiful life. And I want to know what has led you to this point. Sometimes. Yeah, of course.
What is my story? I obviously grew up around here, like in Byron. I grew up on a little farm with 2 brothers, and I like very musical family. Like, my older brother like played in bands from the age of 12 or something, and I was like going to gigs every weekend.
Wow.
Throughout like his whole high school. I don't know, I played like in a kids band when I was like 9, doing like like Australian, like, kids music but like about native Australian animals.
Oh wow, interesting.
Where I played the bass. And before that, I think I was in a band at school, and then ended up in this like kids band thing. We ended up playing like a lot of shows. We went like to Port Fairy and stuff.
What?
It was a weird time, but
That's so
it
crazy.
was amazing.
See, you have so many stories like that where you're just like, oh yeah, that happened. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, they're just like the like little flows of life. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense right now. But when I reflect back, I was like on stage dressed as like, like in a vest that was supposed to be a red belly black snake, and there's like a massive echidna mascot dancing around in front of me. So like,
people that are not Australian watching this right now are like, sorry, what?
A lot of things there that I don't get. No, but as in like, on reflection, it's like, wow, that was a weird time. So yeah, I guess like always been quite music focused. And yeah, like, I don't know, what else?
I mean, I'm just super interested because you're saying like your family was so musical, right? Mm-hmm. How do you think that has affected your just idea, like growing up being like, I can actually do music,
Yeah, I think it's like a cult, like it was a cult, like, a culture thing, or like, a family culture thing, in the sense that like it was just really normalized to play music and learn an instrument, and like we all got the privilege to have like, piano lessons from the age of like 5 or whatever. And it was just always supported, and like Dad would bend over backwards to like, help make spaces for that, and have like supply gear and drive gear, and like support it in any way that he could. So it was like, there's just zero friction there, like, so it was always just like, yeah, that's what makes sense. And so yeah, like, but to be honest, like, it wasn't like it was my whole life either. Like, I went through stages where I wasn't really interested, or like I've had like always been interested and loved it, but it's only until recently that I've actually got all my kind of things together to start producing stuff. Which but certainly, like, that kind of then like what becomes a possibility, and like where you're allowed to dream about like what music could be and things is so much, like, so much space for that, when there's like someone always being like, yeah, you want, like, here's the PA, like, plug it in, let's do it, like,
so cool,
which is amazing.
Fully. And like, what was there a point where you did realize that you wanted to do music, and it wasn't just like a family tradition, like, you know, thing, but you're like, oh, I actually want to take this a bit more seriously and like work on it and create my own stuff?
To be honest, it was like in these last years, like in the last year, just like traveling and kind of actually having this very strong moment of being like I'd always written music, I'd always recorded music, but I'd
Yeah.
never finished anything. And then I remember having this moment where I was in Portugal and it was kind of like, I was like, hang on a second, like, because I suddenly didn't really have a purpose, and I was kind of had been meeting all these people and seeing all these people do different things in terms of like what they're doing with their life. And I do have like a moment where I just remember being like, like,
Music's my thing.
if I wanted to, well, it's not my thing, but it's like, this is like, I love doing this. This makes a lot of sense. It's like, if I want to do it, I kind of just have to do it, right? Like, you know, it sounds so simple, but I think
It's
it was
so hard.
too easy to fall into the kind of like, oh, I'm gonna, like, you know, a band's gonna come along, or like, yeah, like someone's gonna be like, hey, come to the studio and like record this song that you have. Whereas it was that moment of being like, I just got to do kind of something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And then, so I just recorded heaps last year and finished an EP, which will be released like April.
Yeah.
Maybe? Well,
when
probably.
this podcast comes out, it might already be out. So if it is,
well,
you
I
guys
think
need to check it out.
The whole thing won't come out till June.
Okay, well
or
then,
even July.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe
we
this
can do.
we'll see.
You know, but you should go listen to it.
Yeah, you should definitely go listen to
would
it.
help.
I was so Paddy lives in Berlin now, and if you guys follow along on my YouTube, I did a Berlin vlog, and you can kind of see I had like a day where I came and visited you in the studio while you were recording, which was so fun, just being able to see you in your element. And like, I don't know, I just think you're so talented, but it was also just so cool seeing you work, and like I had such a good time just watching.
Yeah. Also, like, it was quite a cool space.
Yeah, it was a beautiful
hilarious.
studio. Yeah. So that was really amazing, and I want to like talk to you more about just like how was the process of like actually creating this EP, because as a filmmaker, more so like film, and a lot of the stuff I do is like I make it and I post it quickly after, and like part of why I am able to overcome my perfectionism is because I'm like, okay, I just gotta keep going. It's like no one's gonna be like rewatching it or blah blah blah. Whereas like with music, I'm like, you put out a song, and once it's out, it's like this person's gonna listen to that same 3 minutes over and over.
You're asking someone to like, you know, just keep re-engaging with it.
And like I feel like I just am always like, fuck, I would struggle so much with being like, when is it done? And like not being, because obviously once you've heard it so many times when you're editing it, it's also like, fuck, is this even, I don't know. I just want to hear about your like process and how that whole situation was.
Yeah, I think like, so it was kind of like a realization of like, oh, I have all these kind of demos, which like kind of like rough sketches of tracks, or sometimes it's just a verse and a chorus, or sometimes just a groove. But it was that moment where I was like, okay, like the goal for this year is to finish a thing, you know, let's do a thing kind of mentality.
Yeah, let's do a damn thing.
Let's just do something. From my experience, like I would put up a lot of roadblocks in that experience, like in that process, because I would be like, well, yeah, now I need to record the guitar, and I need to have like this guitar or this amp, or it has to be in this space, you know, like I would kind of create a disillusion for myself about how that needed to be, or like what is the correct way to go around it. And so then to kind of overcome that, it was like, hey, like just take these demos, like finish them, like finish the structures, write the lyrics, and just like get them to a point where, you know, it sounds good, which is like so subjective, but as in like, because a lot of it's like through the computer, which is like MIDI, and MIDI has like a really kind of it has its sound that can't, like, you know, is just a bit like, it's its own thing.
Okay.
I don't like, well, you can just like, you know, when it's a MIDI like
okay.
sound. So then it was like, okay, like in the moments where there are MIDI things, like how do you like just like find ways to kind of disguise that and like, you know, change that
Make
so
it
that
your own,
so that you kind of like, so it sounds nice. And so that was like a big side to making the process work, was just being like, no, this thing needs to be finished. Like it needs to be done. It can't, like, you can't be like, oh no, I need a drummer to do all this stuff. Or like, oh no, I'm not good enough at playing guitar. It was like, okay, just like cut together enough takes that so it sounds like you can play it well. Whereas like, and you know, like I think that was liberating in a sense, because it's like, cool, like I'm gonna drive this thing and that's what's gotta happen. But it's certainly after a while, like, yeah, like the revisions and always like, because it was kind of like I can work on it anywhere, I would always be listening to it, or like, you know, sometimes just sitting on the couch like watching something at the same time as like listening to it. And it's like, that was also that moment of like, this isn't conducive to like good, or like, this isn't really conducive to creativity, because I'm just kind of like, now I'm tweaking minor things to like make myself feel like I'm doing something, but it's like, it's not really having like major leaps and bounds forward. But I think it also, it was nice to be able to do it in the apartment where we were in Berlin, like, and then I was lucky to be able to kind of go to friends' studios and like try out a few different things. But at the end of the day, that was kind of more kind of just the act of going to the studio and the gear, I guess, is why, like, I don't know, I was never like, oh, I really need a studio, I think, as well. And also the project was kind of like, you know, you can't slow yourself down. So like, if you can't get access, like, gotta move on. You gotta find a way around it.
Me and Eden actually did an episode the other day, and we were talking a lot about just, I don't know, just growing up and having to just figure random gear out and like just make what you have work, and how much that has helped us in the long run. And I think you probably definitely had that with your family and stuff, like living on a farm. You're like, you know what, we're just gonna have to use this and and like, and it's kind of the best part, because that's what ends up also sometimes like differentiating your project from like someone else, because it's like that different sound or that different you know, like,
it's like a product of your problem solving. Like, it's and then it's interesting, like creative problem solving's quite like a I reckon it also really contributes to like someone's unique flavor.
Completely.
Like, because you know, you can't really teach someone how to problem solve. All you can kind of do is like, you know, see how they do, right? But totally, like growing up and just being like, you've just got to kind of make it work. And like, then that was kind of another thing in the music side of things, was being like, you know, I spent so long like setting up random studios and like bringing bits of gear together and just kind of making it work. And so that was already pretty deeply rooted in the process, like the creative process. And so I think once it was kind of like, oh no, now this is about like getting to the final product, like then you just have to like bring that all together and, you know, full steam ahead. Wow.
And so are you like nervous to be putting it out, or are you feeling pretty just like, get it the fuck away from me, like I just need it out there?
Pretty over it. Like, I still listen to it every now and then, and like obviously like we're doing music videos for it at the moment. It's like,
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to watch.
But you're just listening to it a lot. And you're just like, and I don't know, that was the other thing, was like, there's beyond like finishing a track, like the rest was just like, I didn't know what was
how to do it.
Like
Yeah.
everything was new, and it was
Yeah.
like, how does mixing and mastering work? And like my also like image of like what mixing is and what is the possibility of mixing. Like I had like a very like I did it quite quickly, and like it was a little bit more like broad. It wasn't like a super deep
Yeah,
mixing
yeah,
experience, because it was kind of like, let's get this done, and like
Yeah.
let's just get this sounding like a little bit more clear, but like
Yeah.
not go overboard. But still I would kind of be like, should I leave this? Because do I get to change that in mixing? And
Yeah.
and then you suddenly have this project and you think it's kind of like, just upload it to Spotify. But then and you can just go to SoundCloud. But there was also that side of like, I should probably do some videos for it. Probably like, just even like, oh yeah, you've got to get photos and like for the album cover.
Just
and
like
for
promotion,
single,
everything. Like,
just all of it.
Yeah.
And so you're like, wow, it's like like by the time this is out fully, it's like 7 or 8 months after it's finished.
It's crazy.
Which is like that's like such a weird delay.
Yeah, and like so many of the big artists that we listen to have a whole team doing what, we have to
but
sometimes
still
do.
they would finish and like
So long.
It would be a year between.
Yeah.
Like, because they're also doing like, they have to deliver to labels,
Yeah.
and labels take their time and all of these things. So it's like, it's a weird, I don't know, it's a weird thing about the industry. It's like there's this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also then strange because I'm kind of already like, okay, what's the next thing? And then you have to find this motivation and this like really strong kind of driving force to like promote it once it's out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't really care about this stuff.
Yeah, I know,
of course
yeah.
I care, but like I'm a bit like, fuck, like this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what about this new stuff I'm making? It's great, but like no one's hearing that. Like,
it's so interesting, hey, because so much of like what I do with YouTube and Humble Ego and stuff is like, because I do so much social media, it's like you take a photo, you post, right?
Yeah.
It's like instant. Like even with a YouTube video, if I'm posting weekly, it's like, okay, I film and then I post and then I film and then I post.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when I've done more like bigger projects and short films or new lines of work that then you have like behind the scenes for a while, it's such a different experience because you're like, by the time you put it out, you're like, this isn't even me anymore.
Yeah, you're like, I'm so jaded on this. And
Yeah.
like, I just wanted to like, be done with this so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like, I don't know if you find that, but like, it feels like then it also builds like kind of an unnecessary pressure because you're putting in like this work behind the scenes to like essentially like manufacture some level of success, or you've got your goals that you want to hit, and then that like then puts pressure on this thing because you've spent time like building this thing, and then suddenly like kind of you're promoting it, you're marketing it, and you're like, oh, like if this just crashes and burns, you're a little bit like, would have just been better off to just like post that and move on kind of thing.
I know. I even feel that with this podcast because I've literally been thinking about it. Like I've been talking about it since like we met almost like.
Yeah.
So that's like,
it's been
like 2 years. Like I've been thinking about it and
years,
then, 3 years. Oh my God.
But that's alright. Like,
yeah. But like, no, it's good. And I'm glad that I'm starting it now, but it really there was that little voice inside my head that I was like, okay, well, you've been thinking about it for so long and talking to people about it. Like there's this pressure for it to then be, which there isn't. It's my own like thought of what people are thinking. But I'm like, oh fuck, like are they expecting something great? Because I don't know if I can provide like that level of, it's like sometimes this like extra work. I don't know, like as a creative, there's this like thing of like, it's meant to be effortless and like, all this like.
Right. And that like everything, it was all super intentional and it was meant to happen and how it's happening and everything was like beautifully came together. Yeah. Which is just like
which is never the
case ever. And and I think it was also like a thing was like I would always be like, oh yeah, I play music, and then people would be like, oh yeah, what projects? Like, can I listen to some? And then I was like, yeah, like I just haven't done that. And then after a while I was like, you know, then that manifested in the mind of like, oh yeah, like this person's like about to release music and people are like always keen to hear things.
Yeah.
More out of like, they're just excited to hear something or whatever. But then that like so easily became this kind of like, oh yeah, like
Fuck, I need to,
everyone's
like,
expecting something of me.
Yeah.
And then you put like more pressure on this thing.
Yeah.
And so then I think like then that feeds, that's like the similar thing when you just like, probably for you, you're like, I've talked about this podcast for so long.
Yeah.
People are like waiting for it.
Yeah.
Whereas like no
one
one's
cares.
waiting, you
No
know,
one
like
cares. It's like, it's such a like the ego just being like, fuck, people are waiting and thinking this and that, and it's just like,
yeah.
actually
like,
no, like even if
really
they
running
are
that,
and
like,
they listen to one thing and they're like, yeah, cool, like no, you know.
Totally. And like, you know, we're just like running that kind of main character storyline of like, you know, people are like reading these pages of my life.
Yeah. And like,
they're not.
Yeah. It's so funny. Even like I catch myself like with fucking Instagram. Like I'll post stories and like, I don't know, sometimes I'll overthink it and be like, oh fuck, maybe I should say this or something instead.
Mm-hmm.
And like you see all the people that have seen it, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, they've all seen it. But then I like think about it. I'm like, I fucking go through stories like I don't read people's stuff all the time.
Right.
So like half of these people that have seen it, they could have just had their phone down and it could have just been like, I don't know, this like idea that everyone's watching and caring as much as you know?
Right. Or like everything, like someone's like really investing in every story, which like if you reflect on your own usage, you're kind of like,
no,
I'm mindlessly.
Yeah. And so I think having that perspective has helped me a lot just as a creative to just be like, okay, great, like do your best, you know, like put intention and care into the things you make, but also like just put it out there, like no one is critiquing it as hard as you. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a thing, like you do also believe in the work, right?
Yeah, of course.
But then that seems to twist into this kind of like, you then overinflate the work sometimes, I think.
100%.
I don't know, that was like, you know, you want it to be your best work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think it is, and then, you know, that's where you're at there in that time.
Yeah.
And I think it's remembering that it's like, it's quickly going to become like old work.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And just to be a bit more like, okay, like wear your heart on the sleeve all the time. It's such a good way to live.
Yeah.
But, you know, be easy on yourself.
Completely.
As well. Like,
yeah. I feel like that's the hardest, you know, that's what I hope this podcast will help maybe other creatives just putting their stuff out there, because it is such a scary part of the process. Like the amount of messages I get of people being like, I want to start a channel, or I want to do this, or I want to do this, but like I'm scared, or I don't think I'm good enough. And it's like, you only learn from doing it. And I remember this one thing that you said like early on in our friendship that's really stayed with me, is just like, you know, you were finding yourself critiquing and judging other people's work until you started putting your own work out there, and then you're just like, oh, I don't know, it just gives you that perspective more so.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like, I think for me it was like, it was really easy to judge someone else's work till like, you know, someone I know puts out a thing and it's like, you know, releases a single and you're a bit like,
yeah,
oh, yeah. Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Which then you start to realize it's like, hang on a second, like I haven't put anything out.
Exactly.
Like who am I to kind of sit back? And I think was very much the phase I was in, or in that transition when we was telling you, because I was like, yeah, actually I'm just going to let, like, even if it's not for me and it's not aimed at me and I'm not like, this is my favorite thing ever, I was like, I get that it's hard to do, and I get that that's things that it takes like a courage, and it's like, let someone be seen for that, you know, for that courage,
for the bravery.
Yeah, for just doing it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being careful of like how you're reacting to things, because it's like what gives you grounds to kind of make that judgment and all of these things.
Yeah,
So.
fully. Yeah, this podcaster I listen, she's also an author, she's amazing. I think her name is Florence Given. I just started like watching her, and I saw like one of her Instagram posts today, and she said the people that are like judging you and bullying you and saying mean things and critiquing your work are usually the ones that don't even have a body of work to critique. And just like that, I feel like encompasses it so well. Right. It's like,
it's kind of like a weird extension to kind of the facelessness you have online.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's really easy to say things online because you're like, well, you know, come at my account.
Yeah.
You know, like I can just log off whenever I want. And so it's easy to be like, you know, kind of throw shade on someone else's work, and then they kind of turn around and they're like, well, you're just a human, not doing anything. And you're like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think for me, the biggest place where I have that is acting, actually. I feel like I can watch a movie and be like, oh, they were a bad actor. But then it's like, okay, put me in that fucking scene. Who knows if I would do any better, you know? Like, and I think because I had loved acting and wanted to be an actress for so, like, long when I was younger, and still now I'm like, I love acting and I would love to pursue it more. Because I'd been judging all those years, it even made it harder for me to then be like, okay, do a course or try to do a scene, and like, because I put this pressure on myself then to be like, okay, well then you now need to be better than all those people.
And you're also like, I've said all these things,
and
now I'm gonna have to,
And it's like, once you put yourself in those shoes, like, it takes courage and vulnerability, and everything that looks so effortless that we see online so much of the time is not.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and like all the kind of anxieties that you go through, like someone else is probably also, like, more often than not, that person is also going through those anxieties, and like how tough is it for like you to then play into those anxieties? Like you already are, you know, I find like I'm already dealing with enough like trying to get over my own overthinking, that it's like, if you then encounter someone who's kind of like, wow, dude, like great stuff, like, you know, probably could have spent a little bit more time on it, and you're a bit like, oh, okay, like probably, but like at the same time, like you can kind of it can really throw you, I think.
Fully. And like with this EP, did you do a lot of writing from like, or draw inspiration from your personal life into the writing? I always find that so interesting with artists, because on one hand you can, and then on the other hand you can just completely make I don't know, like.
Yeah, I think, there's certainly songs that were like, you know, like personal, like some stories, or like certainly drawn from like from a experience. You know, at the same time there's some hooks that I'm like, just rhymes, like, well, it just like rhymes, and or like, you know, I think the first single's just like, that was just from the demo. Like it didn't mean anything, and then I kind of created it around it, and it kind of became this thing, and I can easily like talk about what it, like, you know, I can create the story behind it, but realistically it was just kind of what was there. It was like, cool, we'll roll with it. But I think also, like there's some hooks that I'm a bit like, it's pretty generic, like, and there was moments there where I was like, this isn't groundbreaking. and probably, and that's where there was like an interesting side to the, like the artistry, but also wanting to get it done, where it was like, maybe this isn't like the most beautiful or like the most incredible kind of crafted lyric or whatever, but it was more kind of being like, but like the song has an energy and it has this thing, and like, yeah, again, it comes back to that roadblock of being like, you know, also like, it's not the best, but it's not the worst one you could use. Like, it's just like realizing that it's like, it doesn't, it's like, oh, that's kind of what that's also like very clearly what I'm feeling. And I don't know, that's an interesting lyric thing where it's like, because I like a lot of the time the lyrics come after the music, or like sometimes in tandem, but it really depends. And so like, I found myself just being like, I could search and be more clever with this, but then I was like, would that actually, like, would that just then obscure the meaning more?
Fully.
And then does the song really have as much, like, you know, is it open to be connected with? And like, sure, like, I'm sure people would, but at the same time, I had that sort of like, well, leaving it quite clear and quite plain, like is there harm in that as well?
Yeah, completely.
Which, I think, you know, who's to say?
Yeah, well, I just feel like also you saying that has like just reminded me how much I, as a creative, will think of an idea and then be like, oh, well, yeah, that's not groundbreaking or new or like blah, blah, blah. And that stops me from creating. Like last night I was going to sleep and I had like a bit of a short film vision and like idea. And then I was like, but like, Joy, like this shot has been done before and this story isn't like anything crazy new. But then I was like, but that doesn't fucking matter. Like if you want to do it, it's going to be different, and it doesn't need to be groundbreaking for it to be good and to touch a chord and to be worthwhile making, you know?
Yeah, and like your approach is always gonna be your approach.
Yeah.
Right? Like your outcome. Like you can be really good at replicating, but it's still coming from you, and if you're inspired on it, like I'm sure something special is in there.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, it's also just like what you tell yourself, right? It's all like, it's all relative. Like you can be like to yourself, like, oh yeah, it's not cool enough or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it's what you can, it's what gets you excited and what feels right for you. So I think you can kind of semi gaslight yourself into like making a pretty generic idea like seem cool. You're like, oh come on, that's cool,
super cool.
It's great. This will work.
Oh god. Eden, how long have we been filming?
47 minutes.
Okay, cool. All right.
Crazy. Flies, huh?
It really does, doesn't it? So I think this is a good time to wrap it up. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
And it's the question that I ask all my guests at the end, which is, at this point in your life, right now,
how much money do you have in your bank account?
Yeah. And do you want to transfer? No. Do you feel like you need to work on your humility more, or maybe the ego and sense of self?
I think humility. I think there's enough ego there for me, and it's not that it feels like a big problem, but at the same time, I don't think you can ever be too humble, like, and ever be like too appreciative of like yourself and then of other people, and just like open. I like, for me, like humility brings then like an openness to be like, oh, I can sit back and tell this girl whose video I saw that it's great, and I think, and that it's really cool that she's doing what she's doing, because there's nothing there telling me like, oh, this isn't cool, or like maybe this person isn't cool, and so like telling them what they're doing is cool, like, you know, makes you look a little lame or whatever. I think for me, like, always probably more into the world of humility. It's like, I feel like it's the best and the place, like, that helps you connect most with like community and kind of and open yourself to all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been so wonderful.
Nice. Yeah, I'm so grateful that we got to do this because, yeah, from day one when I've been thinking of the podcast, I wanted you on. And I mean, you usually live in Berlin, so I feel very lucky that I got to.
I know. It's such a
have you
special
here.
treat.
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I don't know
Thanks.
when your EP comes out, but if it is out, it'll be linked in like the description if you're watching on YouTube. Follow Paddy on. Well, I mean, we don't even know what your name is gonna be.
Well, there's a name, but we
we'll
don't
keep
know
it.
when.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
you know,
We'll
link it all.
Yeah, we'll link it all. I'll put it on the screen. And
yeah, listen.
Yeah.
Like, give it a listen.
It's really truly amazing. I love it.
Thank you.
It's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, subscribe to the Humble Ego YouTube channel. You can find Humble Ego Collective on Instagram. Leave your reviews, your likes on all the wherever you stream your podcast. I've been trying to get better at this end thing, and every time I'm just like,
wrapping it
just
up.
follow on this place and
do
like,
it all.
yeah, do it
Be
all.
part of all
Support
the
it.
platforms.
Be a part of the
Support all big
collective.
companies.
But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you got something out of it, and thank you.
Thank you, Joy, for
Aw.
bringing it into the world.
No, I'm very, very grateful that I finally can do this with you. So,
Ah.
yeah. Mwah.
Well.
Bye.